everyone. Thanks so much for joining us in this panel, Transition, a Career in Academia. So I would like to thank everyone for being here today. Maybe we can introduce each of you. We have Arash, if you can introduce who you are for the audience, where you are located. Yeah, just briefly, yeah.
Right, how do we go?
Yeah, you can introduce yourself, just like briefly, yeah.
All right, I'll start. So, hello everyone. It's a big pleasure to be here. My name is Arasho Judani. I am a senior researcher at the Italian Institute of Technology. It's located in Genova, and my work is mostly centered around collaborative robotics, human-robot interaction and collaboration. And we do a little bit of hardware, but most of our work is about, let's say, coding, software, creating some sort of interfaces that make hopefully the future workers' life easier. We do a little bit of human modeling as well to understand how robots can respond to humans better. And that's my story for now.
Thank you. Thank you, Arash. Maybe Ileana, if you can briefly introduce who you are.
Yeah, so my name is Ilana Niski. I'm normally based in Ben Gurion University of the Negev in Israel. I'm an associate professor there at the Department of Biomedical Engineering. But currently, I'm actually in Cambridge on a sabbatical leave at the Bio-Inspired Robotics Laboratory at the Department of Engineering. And my area of research is, again, kind of similar to what Arash is doing, a physical human-robot interaction. Predominantly in medical applications for surgical robotics, also a little bit of rehabilitation robotics. Similarly, we're mostly interested in control and design of controllers. And the specific approach that I'm bringing to this problem is a neuroscience-based approach. So
right, thanks so much. Also, Julia, if you can tell us more about you.
Hi, it's wonderful to be here. I'm Julie Shah. I'm a professor of aeronautics and astronautics at MIT, and I'm a PI in the Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory. And I'm an AI researcher, and I focus on developing AI models that model people, human cognitive state, human workflow, and are able to adapt based on disturbances and unforeseen circumstances to facilitate more effective collaboration between humans and machines. So I've deployed collaborative robots in industrial environments that work alongside people to build planes and build cars, and also intelligent decision support for fighter pilots, nurses and doctors, applications along those lines. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Julia. Maybe Jeannette? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me to this panel. I'm looking forward to the discussion. And so my name is Jeannette Bohg. I'm assistant professor at Stanford University in the computer science department. And my area, I work on robots, specifically on manipulation robots. And I would say my research is at the intersection of robotics, machine learning, computer vision. Yeah, and I'm looking at very many different applications of robots manipulating any kind of object, rigid, articulated, deformable, with a swarm of robots, whatever robot, really, manipulating things. So, yeah.
Thank you, Jeannette. Thank you. And Jens,
Yeah, my name is Jens Kober. I'm an associate professor at the Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands. And yeah, it's a very interesting panel. We all fit very nicely together in terms of research topics. My own research focuses roughly on machine learning applied to the movement of robot arms. And what I'm very much interested in is how to best make use of human expertise during the learning process.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. So I would like to start a question. I think many students are looking for this panel because we have the question, how I should know that academia is for me or not? Some people, I read a lot of stories, and based on the question we receive, you do undergraduate studies and then you are not sure whether you should go for academia or not. And maybe I'm curious to ask each of you how life as academician is really is in different stages, because we know when you're a PhD student or postdoc, if you decide to do that, that also something we'll cover. And then as a professor, there's a lot of questions people ask. How I can know this for me or not? For you listening now, I can figure out that. And not just to select because everyone is doing that, so let's do that. And it's happening. So who wants to start? How is your real life as a academician? The bad one and the good one, just the realistic perspective. Who would like to start? Okay.
I can maybe start.
Okay.
If that's okay. So I don't know if I can speak, give like very general advice on this. I'm sure like every person makes decisions in slightly different ways. Some people are planners, some people are more intuitive in a way. Some people have very many different constraints on kind of about life in all sorts of ways, about what they can actually do from this perspective. But personally, the way I decided, and maybe not very consciously, but what I did was I tried both things. And the way I did this is by doing internships, doing my PhD. So in a way, I decided for trying a PhD because I really like problem solving, tinkering with robots. I just really like that. And I kind of fit into my life to do that at that point. And so I decided to do that. I just enjoyed that kind of academic curiosity, I guess, for solving problems. And then afterwards, and within that PhD, I did an internship. In fact, it was in the US. It was at Bohg Arash back in the days when they still existed in 2011. And while I learned a lot there, I also saw a difference between an academic approach to robotics and an industry approach to robotics, although maybe Bohg Arash was also a very special place. But I realized that I really liked academia much more, and that's how I decided to actually pursue a postdoc after my PhD. So for me personally, I decide these things by actually trying them and see how I like them, because it's difficult to rationalize without having actually experienced it. That's my personal experience, at least. Maybe others made these choices differently.
Maybe join in on so I guess the one thing that I'm not a planner as well, so I really didn't know until the end of the PhD that I would like to continue to academic career, and my main factor is it's fun. So I know there are difficult moments in the PhD, also in the postdoc, and I won't lie, also as a faculty. But it's the part of like, okay, but I really enjoy the work. That was number one factor. For why more in academia, because you can enjoy many things, is this ability to really explore what I want, this complete freedom to really pursue any research question, no matter how hard it is and how long it will take, no time constraints on answering the question. This is the major factor for academia. And the last thing is that I love traveling, and I don't think it's highlighted enough how much can you explore the world by being an academic. And this is now an example because, I mean, you live in California, and then you live in the UK, and then you live in wherever.
Great. But I would like to push back again on the point, how you figure out that, because I think still, if you want to do a postdoc or find a position, what makes a successful academician? Yeah, there's a good side, but if anyone just doing now a PhD, how you make sure you're eligible for the market? Because we know, let's be honest, there is much competition out there, and there's a lot of issue we will touch on later, but what makes a successful academician, or what makes you eligible to apply for a position as a professor? I think that's many people want to know the answer. What are criteria? What are the metrics do you think makes you a successful academician? Yeah. Anyone would like to answer that?
I don't have an answer. I'm just going to give you some thoughts.
Yeah.
For me, it was a bit similar to what Jeannette was saying. I was also trying it out in a sense, doing internships, and then my postdoc was more or less at a research institute, Honda Research in my case. But to come back to your new question, so I'd say moving between a PhD student and postdoc position, that's a step, but it's not such a huge one. But then kind of in terms of expectations and what you do and the requirements, moving from a postdoc to a faculty position, at least for me, that was quite a drastic change. And I'm not sure how you can prepare for that. The dean of my faculty likes to compare it between moving from a soccer player to a soccer coach, and the step between postdoc and tenure tracker. The other thing I wanted to say is I'd actually put it a bit more negatively than the other two speakers. I figured out that the things I don't like, I actually have both in academia and in industry. And academia gives me more freedom, like they already said. So for me, that was the deciding factor.
Great. So maybe I'm curious to ask maybe Julia, what things maybe you think need to change it in the academic career? Or maybe experience.
Again, as Jeannette mentioned, I can share my own experience, and then some others have to figure out how transferable it is. But I was not born knowing I wanted to be a professor, so that's for sure. My dream was always to go work at NASA and be a civil servant at NASA, and JPL caught my eye. And I was in high school and I looked up online how do you get, who works at JPL, and 80% of them have PhDs. So that was always in the back of my mind. I'm like, okay, so if I want that job, I may need a PhD. And when I started grad school, that was sort of my goal out of grad school. And a professor invited me to TA one of the undergrad controls classes. And that was a very big stretch for me because I'm a shy person and do not like public speaking, believe it or not. It was very stressful and challenging for me. But I actually really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed being in front of the class and watching people sort of understand, step by step what I was working through. It felt very immediate compared to research. And that was the first time I kind of looked up at the professors teaching that class and said, what is their job actually? And then I started asking questions. What is a professor's job? And I applied sort of broadly out of the PhD. But the main reason I applied to faculty positions as a part of that is because my advisor asked me along the way, what are you thinking for your, future steps? And when I said, maybe a professor, he did not laugh at me. And I thought, he said, okay, well, we can, think about, putting an application together for that at some point. And so I did, among other things. I had the really interesting opportunity to work at industry for a year. I knew I was going back to MIT. I had accepted the offer for the faculty position at MIT. And my time in industry, I thought I was going back to academia because I love to teach, to be honest. I mean, I love research. But what I learned in my time in industry is that to be successful really in any job, you have to be an outstanding teacher. There's teaching in any job that you do, including in industry. But there were differences in how you formulated problems. So I was given a problem and asked to sort of lay out a research program for it, or develop R&D really program for it. And I came back to them and said, okay, so here's the most general formulation of the problem, and it's probably a 2-year project. And they were like, okay, but something needs to be on the factory floor in 6 weeks. And I was like, okay, I see now. So it was, but really exciting, right, to make something real on such an immediate time frame. But what brought me back to academia and what's really kept me there is at academia, we have to fight for like every 100K in a way that my colleagues in industry don't. But you have this amazing opportunity to have a vision for the future that someone is not bringing to you. It's yours that you want to, and then show someone that it can be possible through your technical expertise in your work. And that's really inspiring for me to be able to, convince someone something is interesting enough to fun, and then be able to show a different future that might exist by following that path, shaping technology in a particular direction. And so I'm obviously biased because I stayed in academia, but it's a really great job. Again, with pros and cons, but it's a super great job.
Wonderful, yeah. But maybe, I will ask you if you want to add. Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah, it's fine.
Go ahead, please.
No, I wanted to tell, it also depends on you, a little bit on your experience, right? So I think the background of how you did your research, or let's say how you ended up in industry, probably if you had let's say a pleasant PhD or some sort of like a good, fruitful, let's say productive postdoc afterwards, this kind of encourages you to stay in academia. But on the other hand, industry, for instance, some people got mundane jobs and they got infected by the negative, let's say, or at the same time they got very stable position, a little bit of trade-off in between. But to my vision, I think the most exciting part of academia is its flexibility, right? So for instance, as kids, we were playing with several toys, and sometimes you get bored with one toy and just you just change it because some new toy comes and start exploring it, playing with it, and stuff like that. I think academia is a little bit the same, except they pay you even for doing this kind of stuff. I think you can explore new directions, and when these new directions can also have some impact, and it comes back with some results that you see things can change by the stuff that you might be creating eventually. This brings a lot of joy, and I think this joy also exists in industry. It's just, I think it's 50% what you're made from. If you're responding to the stimuli coming from the environment, and also a little bit of experience. Not everybody has the chance of ending up in good groups of research or in good industry. So combining these probably will show you the direction.
That's a good point. That's also a question from a student. What factor do you think, like networking in academia, beyond that you really bash about that, but let's be honest about factors that could be enhance the chances to be in academia, because we know that sometimes there's a lot of issue here, the networking. What do you guys think was for you? You wish to that, but just make it easier for you to find what you really want. Do you think networking? What other factors do you think for a student listening you have to pay attention for? Besides you enjoy what you do, what's something you have to consider, like networking? I'm curious. What maybe Jeannette wants to add something here. Yeah.
Maybe something that coming a little bit also back to the question you had before. What are the factors that make you a good academic person? You should ask your advisor or any mentor you have. And so this is where networking, as you just mentioned, is actually important. It's good that if you decide like being a professor could be interesting to you, to get an outside perspective, like on like, what do you think do I have to do still in order to have a good application package that I can then send on the faculty market? And so your advisor or other mentors are super helpful with that. And so networking, I know there's like this Rising Stars, for example, that is super helpful for people to go to and just understand and get a little bit of coaching. And so taking these opportunities and trying to go to these kinds of events really, I think is really helpful to understand maybe also where the things are you still have to work on. So definitely networking is something I recommend. Personally, I also never thought to become a professor until someone of my senior colleagues asked me, like, so, like, don't you want to do that? And then I was starting to think about it in the first place. So I think this maybe happens to some other people as well. So networking is important. And then if you ask someone, they can look at your CV. What kind of publications do you have? Do you maybe, at the end of your PhD, maybe you should lead a project rather than being necessarily the first author, to also kind of have that kind of experience of leading a research group. This is what Jens just said, right? You move from being a soccer player to being a coach, actually. This is something that is definitely a very good, I think it's a very good characterization of the how you change, how your job changes. And then trying teaching is important because teaching is such a big part of this. So if you hate it, I think you maybe shouldn't do academia, honestly, or you should go to a research institute where teaching is maybe not like the core part of your job. So that's maybe another advice that I would.
That's very excellent point. I would like to ask you guys about the research itself, because one of the questions, there's a guy asking, he's doing like a surgical institute. He's not doing a practical work, and he has a lot of concern here that, should I change what I'm doing? My chances based on the research, whether the research is trendy, will have a higher chances to get a position because I'm working in this area. Do you think the research itself, if someone interested, have to pay attention, whether that would be enhances my chances in academia as a career? Anyone would like to answer? Also, Jeannette, you think the research topic, because I think that's also another topic related to publication, related to funding. We will discuss that later. But do you think for PhD student now or master student, the topic of research should pay attention what kind of topic you are working on?
I think I want to answer this question.
Yes.
So it's I think often I have people ask this question. I hear people ask this question: what is the best research to do in terms of like getting to academia? And in my eyes, and again, it's very subjective, but I think that's part of the things that you need to understand in yourself, whether you want to become a researcher in academia, is whether there is a topic that you care about enough that you want to pursue it. And then actually, this is the one thing that should not be dictated by the environment, because maybe now there is a topic that you're super interested in and it's not very popular, and maybe it's going to be a little bit even more difficult to find a position. But then it's really your passion to study, and I think this is the really important thing.
Yeah, if I can add something to that, it's actually quite interesting. So sometimes in the conferences, the people that start their PhDs or they're like in the middle of or end of their master, let's say, courses, going to the conferences, they see there are like these tracks for this topic, that topic, and everybody's following them. So when you're starting that, after 3-4 years of finishing your PhD, the best you could do is to become another name which is known in the society for that, let's say, topic. But there's no topic after your name. So maybe you're starting a topic. For the time being, nobody has interest towards that. Maybe it doesn't even exist. Maybe it's you're combining some topics, creating some new line. And people will say, that's interesting, but haven't heard of it. So you might be the only one in a session and irrelevant to what other people are talking. But in a few years, people will know you. You're the pioneer of that direction. So it doesn't mean what you're doing now, if nobody else is doing it, means that basically it doesn't, it's not worth. But if it happens in the 5 years time, maybe you should stop doing that. But if you see the trend, if you see that there's feedback, people are starting to do things it goes well, probably you're in the right direction. Results are a bit slower than expected in research if you're working on new areas, of course.
Yeah, that's a good point, Arash. But I would like to maybe bring more what is maybe in reality we see that, and I think that's related to, again, publication and funding. And some researchers, for example, I think that's something we have to discuss, avoid this kind of new idea or risky point of research, because you're not sure. If you're doing a publication, you're already done, so you can't get grants. And let's be honest here, for a student, how they can select their own topic? If, for example, I'm afraid to go this new idea because it's risky, it's new, no one did it. Why should risk in that? And that's what happening related to funding and publication, which we would cover. But do you think that for students can do that? I'm just curious, what do you think?
I'm happy to jump in. I think echoing some of the other points, you really have to start with what you believe in and what you're very passionate about, and that may be with the current trends, and it may not be, and there's a little bit of a different path if it's one or the other for sure. But a core part of being a professor is writing proposals, but like more fundamental than that, it's like selling the ideas, right? And you are a much better seller of the ideas when you truly believe in them and are truly passionate about them. And you'll do your best, most creative work by pursuing work that you feel that way about. So that's the root of success. And then I know why you keep coming back to this question, because I had all the same questions when I was a grad student, and I would go to professor and ask exactly that set of questions and would get back the answers you're getting back now. And the answers would be, well, don't worry about the publications, put that aside, do the work, and then we figure out the publications after. And that's not fully correct, right? I mean, so like you need to pursue your work, that you're passionate about. It needs to be done in a very high quality way. But the way you frame it, and then the way you lay out the paper and the types of results you produce to support, that work is a little different depending on, where you aim to publish that work. And it kind of needs to fit within what's discussed and what's valued in that community. So there definitely is strategy around that. And there's like an option space too. So it might be a little easier or harder to put a certain work in a certain area. You might have to do some additional work to make it go one place or another. But I do fully subscribe to the advice that that's not the first order consideration, but it's not the last either. It's sort of, there is this interplay between the two, but what has to come first is that you're pursuing a direction that you're passionate about.
And that's, it's also going to help in making the steps. So having a vision, having a goal, having a direction, that's something very important when you want to take the step towards becoming faculty. That's what a lot of people are looking for. I mean, that's kind of the flip side of having the freedom to explore our interests. We actually need to define them, and to make that work, you also, like Julie was just saying, you need to build up kind of your profile to position yourself as the person in that specific area and kind of show that you're capable of going towards that goal and reaching that.
Great. I don't know if anyone would like to add this point again. Anyone would like to add here?
I think I have one thought, and it's related to the fact, so it kind of goes back to how do you know, but the thing is that the amount of like guidance and advising you get sort of develops as you go through the path, right? Because if you're starting as a PhD student, you know, if you have a topic, an idea that you're super passionate about, and you go to your advisor about it, they will probably follow you because if you're so passionate. And if there is not such a thing, then it's also okay, because then the advisor can kind of guide you. And then as you develop and you move forward, I think it is something that is like, if I'm thinking about one thing that I need to know, am I like, can I be an academic career? At the end of your postdoc or PhD is really important that you have those ideas that you're passionate about, but it's okay that you have them and don't have them in the beginning. And one other point that I really wanted to mention is that is related to the imposter syndrome, is that you don't have to know that you're suitable to be an academic. It is okay that you want to be one, and try and let the environment decide for you. Don't decide for yourself.
That's an excellent point. Thanks so much for bringing this point, Elena. And I think this point, there's a question, mini question about that point. I think the question is in what basis would one decide whether to do a postdoc or looking for assistant professorship and the last year of the PhD? So I think that's many people ask this question. I'm in the last year. Should I just try to look for a position or go to postdoc? I think that many people struggle at this point. I wanted to know what you think. Should you do a postdoc? On which basis you decide? Do a postdoc or try, or do both? How was the experience, do you think, or what advices you can give here?
Right. I can add something. So sometimes I see one of the, I think, downsides of research is that sometimes when you're too much head in your computer and you're doing a lot of exciting stuff, but sometimes you lose track of time. I see sometimes people doing 5, 6 postdocs in a row, and then this is so exciting because you keep moving, you're doing a lot of stuff, you're networking, you're doing exciting things, but then you lose basically all the opportunities going around you. You know, I think this you need to capture that before it comes to that point. You know, all the opportunities, especially in robotics and automation society, which is really at the moment we are going towards the direction that, you know, you see a lot of both industry, academia, a lot of nice positions available. I think at some point you need to know when you're ready to take responsibilities for your decisions, because even if in your postdoc, whatever goes wrong, it's your supervisor's fault. But then there will be a moment that you decide, okay, I can take decisions because I have enough experience. Not to be afraid of decisions you take, but of course there will be a lot of mistakes. But in that moment, I think it's time. But we need to be really, you know, it's risky. Sometimes you're too much stuck in a lot of nice things that you lose track of time, and it might be too late when you come back to look for you know, like assistant professorship and things like that. It should, you know, you should take time to all the activities, in my opinion.
That's a very excellent point. Very excellent point. I don't know if anyone would like to add what Arash said. I think, yeah, because many people struggle with this point.
I just wanted to say that for many research-oriented positions in academia, it's also not kind of the step out. There are quite a few people that are coming back again after doing some kind of a postdoc effectively in industry.
Yeah. Okay. So I think, yeah, I think that's point. Yeah, I think it's a very critical point and very important. So any final words about this point in particular, what Arash said, because I think it's relating to many people here. So
Sorry, Julie, you go ahead.
Please.
Oh, okay. So I can maybe say, so what I'm seeing right now is that there are some people who apply right out of their PhD, especially in the US, I think it's more common. And then some people first do a postdoc and then go on the faculty market, if that's their choice. But even if you are applying right out of your PhD, often people still do 1 year of postdoc, or I think, Julie, you said the same, right? Like you deferred 1 year. I know, like I had a postdoc, like Wenjin Yuan was now faculty at CMU. She already was going to go there, but she did like 1 year of postdoc in between just to get a little bit more experience. And also we talked a lot about what she has to do as a faculty and get some advice. So I think just generally doing a postdoc before you transition to faculty is a nice buffer, right? Where you don't yet have to carry all the responsibility. And now whether to still apply right after your PhD, that's something you should really discuss with your advisor or your mentors who are in your field and have like a good overview of your field, and maybe can tell you like, oh, okay, like how are you doing? Like what are the things you maybe need a little bit more time to work on, you know, like who know, like this is really something your advisor can probably judge best, who's also in that particular field. I would say this is really a personal decision. I would say it's hard to make like general judgment or like give like general advice. I mean, sorry.
Thanks, Jeannette. And I would like to also question, I think many people ask about the publication, because for example's question is, should we publish more on ICRA Iris robotics conference we know, or focus on more journal papers? What do you expect from final year PhD student? And do you think, generally speaking, because I think publication, many questions people ask you, the pressure to publish, and we know that there's, you work in something and there's a pressure, you have to publish this result, and at the same time you need really high quality papers and this either in conference or the journal. So how do you see this process for PhD student? Like, I'm trying to figure out, should I publish more or just 2 papers in journal? How do you see this equation here for publication?
I think one of the terrific question. Yeah, I think one of the reasons it's so challenging to answer that question is it actually varies a lot based on the institution and the department. For what you do, there might be actually more than one department that you might fit in. And for each university, depending on where that department lives in the university, or their particular culture, they might have strong preferences of one of those over the other. Conference papers, we have highly selective conference papers in our field, and many will recognize those as essentially, if a place does something like count, they'll include it in the count as journals, but many places will not. And so, here at MIT, I'm in the School of Engineering in a department where the vast majority of my colleagues publish in journals, not conferences. But there are others in my department that went through the whole promotion process before me and sort of was able to sort of share the, what is a quality publication in the field. And I did not have any issues with, the RSS papers or the, the HRI papers being understood for what they are as very high quality publications. But nonetheless, your promotion case does go up to a larger council with people who have different views. And it was, suggested to me, maybe it would be a good idea to have a diverse portfolio of publications, including some journals. And so that's what I aim to do. And you could put more emphasis in one or the other, but I aim to do a little bit of both. And that worked out very well for me to sort of hedge a little bit. The conferences are there's RA letters, there's ways to get journal papers out at a pace that looks more like dissemination of your results at a pace you'd see at conferences for the purpose of intellectual exchange. And so there's a very large decision space open to you, but I think it is very helpful to be aware that different places will look at your CV and your set of publications differently, and you can't really control that necessarily.
Yeah. So maybe one thing to add to this point is that, and again, I'm coming from an institution where journals are more appreciated for the promotion, so I kind of prioritize the journals. But then for the sake of my students, and also for the sake of me as a community, like conferences are really, really important for the networking and for the fast sharing of ideas, because publishing a paper takes much more time than publishing a journal paper. So if you do choose the journal path, it's really important to try to kind of air the idea via workshop maybe, which does not, like a 2-page abstract, extended abstract in a workshop does not prevent you from immediately sending the same paper to a journal. And then also, again, using archive or bioarchive if you're in a relevant field. So kind of put your work out there, even if you're pursuing the journal path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I can add something to this as well. Jens, sorry, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the number of publications isn't everything either. The citations and related indices also quite often are taking into account. Some countries, including the Netherlands, are trying to change that a little bit to be less focused on these whatever indices and stuff. So yeah, it's also important to keep in mind to not kind of dilute your work too much, but rather focus, like you were saying, also on quality.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Just wanted to add something. My only suggestion is, I think it's always good to go for the highest ranked journals sometimes, because usually these, if you have a really good contribution, you're confident. Usually these contributions are reviewed by experts in the society. Of course, this is a little bit less the case in conferences. Sometimes conferences are reviewed by PhD students that are not very much expert. Sometimes the judgment is not correct, and we know the issues. Of course, this is the fundamentals of the peer reviewing. But in journals, the likeliness of the paper being reviewed by expert is higher. And of course, they might be tougher, but the feedback you receive sometimes is going to open a huge, let's say, road opening, because we submitted several papers in different journals, and sometimes the feedback we received, although at that point negative, in the point of, let's say, oh, we have to write a review, we have to write responses, but some points were taken, and we created several works based on that feedback. Oh, why did you do that? Why didn't you try this method? And I'm like, wow, this is interesting. Let's try it. And this creates a really good, let's say, path in addition to what you're doing. And I think that feedback really worth it. It is worth, because although it's painful at that point.
I like this point so much because I think, yeah, based on the stories, sometimes if you have completely new idea, it's so novel. So it depends on the journal kind of feedback or review process. And I feel there's no consistency here, the way the publication is viewed or the research itself, because it's end of the day the peer reviewed and depend what I think about your research. And I think the point here, what are your advice in that case? If you really want to do something new, maybe sometimes reviewed couldn't understand it. I don't know, have you experienced like that? This kind of the trade-off, I have a new idea, should I submit to the journal, what if rejected? It's happening sometimes, but I don't know what you experience as a senior researcher here.
Yeah, so I can maybe respond to this. So I definitely agree with what has already been said, that you should check in your field what is kind of expected. And so I'm in the computer science department, so journals are not so important, but conference are, and this might be different in the mechanical engineering or any engineering department. So you have to check that. But generally, if you have a new idea and it's kind of like, it's going to take a while to to form the words to really be convincing in your paper, don't send it to a journal. Like, I don't know if you made this experience. I made the bad experience of like, it takes 2 years for a paper to come out. This is way too long. And yeah, okay, there's some feedback, but 2 years, I'm sorry, but at this point it's too long. So I personally, and everyone else here on the channel can contradict me, but I would always rather go for a conference where I get relatively quick feedback on whether I have conveyed my idea in the best possible way or not, and then I can resubmit it. While if I go for a journal, it has really happened that it took like 2 years for a paper to get out, and it actually interfered with the graduation of a student, and this was really, really bad. And so I would never do this again, and rather have a conference paper out first, and then use a journal as a venue to really expand and add insights that I have that maybe build on the idea. So that was my advice to my students who are in the CS department. But this might be different for other departments.
No, thanks so much, Jeannette. I think that's also very important. When I'm curious to ask you in that case, do you think the publication process itself, from your experiences, because you have different experiences, what the optimum way you imagine it should be? for example, you wait 2 years and it's a huge disaster. But in the same time, we speak about minimum time replication. We can't replicate, for example, so for robotics, we have this issue is not working. I assume that's an issue, but for you, when you're imagining what could be like for academician, people know their reality, what kind of publication process do you believe could be optimum for you guys and make it, like really enhancing and not making delay or have a little ego about, I think that's right or wrong. Yeah, that's happening, but what kind of ideal publication process do you think you wish would exist in academia?
Well, just to echo some of Jeannette's comments, when we have a paper that's a little bit or quite a bit different than the other papers we've had in the lab in the past, we workshop that idea, and it's improving the maybe broadening our understanding of the state of the art in that space, but it's also understanding how to convince someone that what we're doing is valuable to them, which takes some work to kind of figure out. And so we literally workshop the ideas. We put a workshop paper out, then never go straight to a journal with something like that, because you will never get that right on the first try. Yeah. So then you try, a conference, and it might be that conference isn't quite the right community, or you just didn't get the argument right, or you didn't support, what you were trying to put forward well enough. And so for something new, we sort of expect that there's going to be, I'm a big believer in the peer review process, if that doesn't come through this. And I think our work is always improved by having that type of discussion, either immediate, via workshopping, reaching out. We reach out directly with our ideas to other labs, other researchers to get feedback on it. And then through the review process, getting very high quality reviews back on something new that you're trying to do. Makes your research better longer term for sure. But yeah, I've never done such a thing of taking one of those new ideas and putting it straight to a journal, and the cycle time is just much too long. The risk is too high, not to me, but to the grad students that I'm working with. So that's not, in my view, the great first place to put something like that to.
That's a good advice.
I think it's quite risky for a grad student to go directly for a journal, right? I think also for the mood, to be, let's say, happier while you're working. It's more important that you have some results already there. So a workshop paper, a couple of conference papers, and so if your years of research is going to become a Nature paper, maybe it can happen, but there's always a what if not, so if after 3 years you're relying on that publication, it's not accepted, then it's going to be a mess. You could have published maybe 4 or 5 conference papers to arrive to that point, and it already boosts your energy. You might learn a lot while writing papers and doing experiments and stuff like that. For sure, it should be stage by stage. I definitely back this up, but I think it's also important to challenge ourselves to say, okay, I am doing a lot of good publications in conferences. Maybe let me try and see what is the feedback from this toughest community in RAS, or let's see how the seniors will behave when they see my paper. Not right away, but eventually it's important to also consider sending to a very good journal, or maybe a combination of works can be sent to get some quality feedback as well.
That's very good point.
I'm so sorry to jump in and interrupt. I wanted to let you know I'm going to have to drop off because I have a dropout in my after-school care today, and I need to go pick up
so much, Julia.
kindergarten.
It was such a pleasure to have you. Thank you.
Oh, this was really fun, and I'm sorry not to be able to stay for the rest, but I look forward to watching it, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
So, I don't know if anyone would like to add something here about this point, or because we are about to, Italiano.
I actually wanted to add, because I thought, at least I interpreted part of your question as to what we would like the review process to be. And I want to bring actually an angle and an idea, a thought from another field that I'm part of, which is neuroscience and more kind of biological standpoint. And one of the things that I really like the publishing model of eLife, which is a new open access journal. And the core idea there is actually the consolidations of the reviewer, between the reviewers, which can be tricky, but it's important because one of the things that can be difficult in the review process, that you get 3 or 4 or 8 reviewer comments, and some of them contradict among each other. So if there is one thing that I actually would like to see evolve in our society in terms of reviewing, is the step where the reviewers can kind of discuss in a discussion that is facilitated by the editor and still keeping their anonymity and everything, but kind of would give a more clear message to the student who's working on that, like what is critical to fix and what the paper could kind of live without, even though it's nice to have.
Yeah, that's a very good point as well. Yeah. So another question, because I think we will close in like a couple of minutes. So what is the role of the brand name of PhD school in hiring decision? And I think the question relating that, should the name of the school really affecting your chances to get a position in top tier universities? What do you think about this question? The name of the school or the brand name? Yeah.
You mean the name of the PhD school?
Yes. Yeah. For example, the name of the school, the PhD school. Do you think that will affecting the chances to be accepted in whatever position you're applying for and in top tier university? That's a question. Yeah.
I think it may open the door to be considered. I don't think it can so much affect your chances of being accepted, but it may definitely help to get a foot in the door.
Yeah.
I would add to that, it's maybe not the name itself, but also the facilities offered by the school. So the people you have around as advisors, or things like the media department that is putting your work out and these kind of things. So yeah, it indeed can help, but what makes or breaks it in the end is really your CV, I'd say.
Arash, want that something?
No, for sure. Unfortunately, of course, it has a little bit of effect where maybe a prejudice, like a first impact would be that, but of course the decision will be made based on your achievements, based on what you have done. Sometimes we receive CVs or we hear about contributions from not very known universities, but those contributions really are way more stronger than some similar contributions coming from very strong universities. Of course, we are learning not to have this prejudice, the first okay, this comes from there, it should be great. If this comes from the other university, it should be really bad. And we are learning to all of us, we are learning to change this view, and I think this is going in the right direction. But at the end of the day, I think what will speak is the accomplishment, is the CV, is the strength of the publications, citations, networking that you have done, and all this will really count.
Great. So maybe just go ahead. Yeah.
Yes. I also want to emphasize. Yes, I think what Ilana said, I agree with that. I think there is some bias, but in the end, it may put your foot in the door. But what really matters are the letters that you get as well, that are written for you, that actually describe your contributions and put it into the correct context of your field, that those people who read your letters may not, they may not be in your field, so they need to understand that. And so that, and the day when you come and have your interview, you talk to all your colleagues, all of these things matter much more. But I do think there is, unfortunately, a bias towards the school name as well, but I think it's more like the foot in the door.
Yeah, that's from the perspective. Yeah. So maybe I'm curious about the skills, just because some people speaking about how to be a good teacher, for example, Jeannette mentioned that, good teacher, and also the admin work. We know that's part of the work as well as academician. So what kind of skills do you think is very, very significant for student listening that you have to instill, just to make sure you have the hard chances to be a good academician? What kind of skill do you think is very significant?
What was most surprising to me? So personally, I never wanted to be a teacher when I grew up. I don't know why, but I never wanted. So I became an engineer and roboticist because, I don't have to deal with people. Honestly, and now the only thing I'm doing is to, be a manager and like lead a group and all of this. So it's all about the people. It's all about the students, which surprisingly, I think my younger self would be very surprised about this, but I enjoy this a lot. So yeah, that's maybe also something to consider, that you can change, or maybe like something you think is true for you may actually not be true. You have to try it first. But yeah, it turns out that if you are in academia and you take a faculty position, you're becoming that coach, right? And you're coaching people. You deal a lot with everyday concerns on all sorts of levels. So I think that's actually something that was surprising to me personally.
Yes. Yeah. Anyone skills for everyone. Yeah.
Communication would maybe be the word, and it can be in so many levels, like writing grants, and then teaching, and then selling your grants, right? Maybe these 2 stages grants where you have to have the interview and you have to defend your ideas in person and sell it, and like this sort of elevator pitch. All of them it's all communication. So you really have to be an expert in communication.
Yeah.
If I can add to that, I think one superpower you need to have is not to take things personally, because it's the most important thing, because people might reject your papers. They have nothing against you. It's just the thing that might evolve. They might want to come work with you, but eventually they change their mind. Maybe there are some other matters in the middle of they might come work with you, but they're not exact. So it's just not taking things personally. It's one of the key things in becoming a good, let's say, researcher or eventually a leader, I think, in academia as well.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say, well, it's more a meta skill of being willing to learn, willing to learn about your own strengths and weaknesses, willing to learn from other people, but also from your own team. For me, it was really, a long learning process, a long evolution.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So 2 questions left I would like to ask before we're closing. The first one about what is thing you shouldn't do to be a successful academic. There's mistakes for sure we do. From your experience, what that's thing that we shouldn't do, that you shouldn't do to be a successful academician? And yeah, maybe that's the first part. I don't know if that's relevant to you. You should avoid doing that thing in academia.
Creating enemies, maybe. I think, I think it's more of encouraging people to what they're doing. I mean, sometimes in academia, you see the aspect of even in conferences, you're giving a talk, and people have this hostile mentality of let's say, valuing other people's work. I think undervaluing other people's work is really bad. Even when you're writing a negative review, it can be like, this work is really bad, or it can be, this can be improved like this. It's best to take the second path instead of, let's help. It's our community. It's small. Yet sometimes you go to neuroscience conferences, there are like 10,000 people get together, and it's still, they get the stadium to be able to have these abstract talks. Our community is still small, I mean, relatively. So we really need to encourage new people or people that are getting in the right direction.
Right.
I had something very similar, because there's not only the worldwide academic community, but you also should not forget about your local community. So the university, you're also very much embedded in that. You need to work together with people and get along with people. Being the brilliant person worldwide, but not fitting in within your university, at least according to my definition, is not a successful academic person either.
Great. Yeah.
I have another point. Not communicating about your work at all, right? Like not going out there, presenting it, just sitting in your room in a way and working on it. Maybe you publish it, right? But you don't really go out and make advertisement for it and discuss with people. I think that's also detrimental, because in a way you have to get out there and make it known, maybe connect to people, maybe collaborate with people to have an impact in a way. I think that's also important, on top of what has already been said.
Maybe I can continue on the same point that Jeannette started, is also kind of not being like afraid to talk, to share it with, I don't know how to phrase it exactly, like open science, like putting your work on archive, talking about it at conferences, even before if it's published in a journal paper, like it, not to be so afraid, like not to be afraid that your ideas may be stolen or something like that, because eventually the value that you get from getting a feedback about work that is not mature is much more than the value of like sitting in your own room and kind of getting somewhere, whether with feedback you would get to something completely different.
Excellent. Yeah. So I think the last question I would like to ask, if someone already been in academia and just try to figure out whether to go industry or maybe to try something else, I think that's a question I think in university, how on earth you can ask this question if people don't have the experiences from the other side. I don't know if you can relate to that. Of course, you're in academia, but if you're a student, for example, I'm not sure now, maybe I'm still in a postdoc or maybe even a professor and I just want to go outside and explore other things and it's happening. What advice you can give, or if you have a student in a situation like that? Is this a point that academia is not for me anymore and I just have to go and explore other options? How you can come up with decision, because some people say that research is like our identity, and most people say that it's become identity. I can't leave it. And you still, I think that's what Arash was saying at the beginning, that time go fast and you're lost in this time. So if you can give advice in that, or maybe insights if someone in a situation like that. Arash, you want to say something?
Right. So if I can start. So I think excluding the last 2 years, because decisions we make based on the last 2 years are probably wrong, because unfortunately in this period, really people working in academia, for instance, my first 2 years PhD students, they have no idea what a conference is. You know, sometimes it looks really sort of a repetitive in front of a screen task that you submit, you record the video and then you upload it. There's no interaction, there's no, so excluding these 2 years, I think when you arrive to a point, not after like first failure, but repetitively, you see that basically what you're doing is not responding. I think the first way is if you can change, because it may be the environment, not you. Maybe the environment is not letting you to produce, because environment makes, you know, like if you put the best tree maybe in an environment, like the most adaptive tree in a dry environment will never, it's quite not. But eventually, if that's not the case, if you really like academia but you see you're not producing, maybe best is to change. But eventually you see that no, it's probably you that you're not responding to this request. I think it's not like either, you know, academia or nothing. So there are many ways of being successful, especially industry now is getting a bit far away from traditional industry. So now there are a lot of R&Ds in industry. So there's still a lot of potential for research, doing exciting stuff there, not necessarily publishing. Publication is just basically in academia. You can do still a lot of exciting stuff, but within an industrial frame.
That's a good point. Yeah. Who wants to add? Eliana wants to add something here?
I don't know if it's so much related to the point, but it kind of resonated to me. This I am my research. I think it's something that I'm super invested in my research. I'm excited about my research. I want to advance my research, but I am not my research. Like I am. It's really important. I think it's something that is a message that is really important for the well-being. And because research can fail, but it doesn't mean that I failed. It means the research question maybe failed and maybe the experiment failed, but not I as an individual.
I would like to thank you for that. Yeah, because I think mental health is a lot of issue, I think, in academia. And also we have a freedom, but we work long hours. So it's, yeah, it depends. So, but I absolutely agree with you. And that's a very important message. Very, very important message. Thanks so much, Julianne, for that. I don't know if Jeannette will add something in that. And yes, just
I feel like this was a great closing sentence. Like that I am not my research, but you know, invested but not defined by it. I think that's a very good point.
So I don't know if anyone would like to add here before we have final words. Anyone would like to add something, or maybe points? Okay. So I don't know if you have any final words like to say for a student. Just final words to wrap up. Yeah.
to me, it's the most difficult and the most amazing job that I could imagine to myself.
Yeah.
And for me, I feel really lucky in doing what I'm doing now, and I really hope that eventually all these research contributions will come to life, and we see them in real industrial settings. In my case, for some people can be hospitals, for some people can be roads, and this makes it even more exciting.
Yeah, and Jens here.
My advice would be don't get frustrated and talk to people.
Great. Yeah. Lastly, Jeannette. So yeah.
Maybe on top of what already has been said, I also want to say that in my job, one thing that I personally enjoy very much is to actually see my students developing and succeeding, and also, being maybe less frustrated because things don't work out as they wanted, but actually coming to that other side as well. So I enjoyed that a lot about this job as well.
Thanks so much. So I think we will close, and I would like to thank each of you for your time. I do appreciate your time and giving us insights for this very important topic. So again, thank you also for Amy and IEEE for organizing this. So I hope you enjoy it, and thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.